Let's enjoy some time enjoying some fiction and talking about a very talented man. Let's get into former Star Trek writing fellow land and talk about the outer limits. This time, tonight, it's Wordsmith Wednesday. And we're going to discuss, that's right, Arthur Conan Doyle.
There is nothing wrong with your television set. Do not attempt to adjust the picture. We are controlling transmission. If we wish to make it louder, we will bring up the volume. If we wish to make it softer, we will tune it to a whisper. We will control the horizontal. We will control the vertical. We can roll the image, make it flutter. We can change the focus to a soft blur, or sharpen it to crystal clarity. For the next hour, sit quietly and we will control all that you see and hear. We repeat, there is nothing wrong with your television set. You are about to participate in a great adventure. You are about to experience the awe and mystery which reaches from the inner mind to the outer limits.
All right, let's talk about a Scotsman. That's right. Let's go to those boys up north of Hadrian's Wall, and talk about Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, a doctor, a writer, a man of world renown who I don't think expected that his creations would be as popular as they were. But I've got some good information for you, and on Friday, we're going to start a story that is one of his chiller stories. Arthur Conan Doyle, 1859 to 1930. Boy, the changes that man saw, huh? As films came in, theater became popular, of course, and the Sherlock Holmes character was turned into a very popular theater character. And then movies, radio, amazing, astounding things, amazing changes, flight, and of course, mechanized warfare, terrible things. And he himself understood the horrors of war. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was born in Edinburgh and studied medicine. He began writing while he waited for his practice to grow, and with 1887's A Study in Scarlet, created Sherlock Holmes, one of the most famous literary characters of all time. He was a volunteer physician in the Boer War and wrote a book on spiritualism. As you know, that time of spiritualism, seances. He attended a ton of seances, and he was good friends with Harry Houdini. I've actually written a little essay, I want to give this to you, about his connections to Houdini, his connections to the man we spoke about last week, Bram Stoker from Ireland, who, as I said, lived right across the street, almost right across the street from Sheridan Le Fanu, who wrote Camilla, a vampire story. So these people were very popular. Conan Doyle became very celebrated, became good friends with Houdini, Houdini being a skeptic, while Conan Doyle was very interested in things like theosophy and the spiritualist movement and seances and things like that. And Mark Snow, if you're familiar with Mark Snow, he was co-creator of Twin Peaks and with David Lynch. And Mark Snow has written 2 books in which Conan Doyle is the main character. He's sort of a Sherlock Holmes type character. And they're very, very fun. And this spiritualist atmosphere and Madame Blavatsky and all those things, they're very, very well woven into the novels. Very, very cool. So I think you'll enjoy those. But let's take a look at what Conan Doyle did, of course, with the Sherlock Holmes series. There are 2 novels, essentially. The Valley of Fear is one of them. And I don't know why Amazon keeps popping up there. And there must be somebody's invading fantasticfiction.com. The Valley of Fear is one of them, and it's a wonderful story. And what's really neat about the Valley of Fear is that a lot of it actually happens in flashback in the United States. It's a great story, and one of the best versions of it that I've ever heard was an audio version, obviously, that I've heard, and it was done by Christopher Lee. And he does every voice in it. He reads it. He does every voice in it. And he does so many different accents. It's really incredible, just phenomenal. And you'll really, I think, be impressed by his talent. What an amazing, amazing actor he was. And you can tell he just enjoyed the Sherlock Holmes character. He played Sherlock Holmes numerous times. He played Sherlock Holmes, and his friend Peter Cushing played Sherlock Holmes. They went back and forth oftentimes. It was wonderful, just wonderful. Did radio shows with Sherlock Holmes, just great. And then, of course, there's The Hound of the Baskervilles. And many people have tried to write sequels to The Hound of the Baskervilles, The Return of the Hound, and things like that. I have to say, I think one of the best takeoffs of Sherlock Holmes, the best pastiches, has been The 7% Solution. And that's by the man who wrote Star Trek II, Wrath of Khan. And we'll tell you about him some other time. But there's also the Professor Challenger stories. So Professor Challenger was, of course, the character who brought us The Lost World. And, of course, Michael Crichton named his novel The Lost World in honor of the Professor Challenger first book by Conan Doyle. Then there's The Poison Belt, The Land of Mist, This Disintegration Machine, and others. And there's so many collections of his short stories. And he has many other novels. One is about a surgeon in 1885 that he published called The Surgeon of Gaster Fell. He's got The Great Shadow, The Parasite, so many really, really good ones. The Narrative of John Smith, so many good ones. And the collected stories of Sherlock Holmes. Of course, he was going to kill Sherlock Holmes, but there was such a hue and cry that he brought Holmes back. And Holmes didn't die on those falls, right? Let me tell you a little bit about Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Again, born in 1859 and died in 1930, 3 years before King Kong came out. What an amazing time. Wow. Something else, huh? Well, let me give you this essay that I wrote. I think hopefully you'll like this. And I'll post this inside the Gardner Goldsmith Substack, inside the fiction section for some of the folks who are subscribers over there. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, master of mystery, adventure, and the unknown. Sir Arthur Ignatius Conan Doyle, born in 1859 and died in 1930, is immortalized as the creator of Sherlock Holmes. Yet his life and career extended far beyond Baker Street. A Scottish physician turned prolific writer, Doyle produced detective fiction, historical novels, science fiction, and horror tales while championing causes from justice reform to spiritualism. His work reflected a restless intellect that blended scientific rigor with imaginative wonder, shaped by personal tragedy and an unyielding curiosity about the human condition. From humble Edinburgh beginnings to knighthood and global fame, Conan Doyle's high points reveal a man who balanced rational deduction with a deep fascination for the inexplicable. Born May 22nd, 1859 in Edinburgh, so I only missed it by a few days. I knew it was May, I wasn't sure when. To an artistic but struggling family, his father Charles was an alcoholic civil servant, and his mother Mary a strong storyteller. Arthur received a Jesuit education in England and in Austria before entering the University of Edinburgh's medical school in 1876. Boy, he must have worked hard. There, he encountered Dr. Joseph Bell. So you're probably familiar with these. There's been a whole series of TV shows based on Bell and Conan Doyle, as Bell was essentially the model for Sherlock Holmes. Bell was a surgeon and lecturer whose extraordinary powers of observation and deduction left an indelible mark on Conan Doyle. As Bell's outpatient clerk at the Royal Infirmary, Doyle witnessed the professor diagnosing patients' occupations, origins, and ailments from minute details like a calloused hand or a regional accent. Years later, Doyle explicitly credited Bell as the primary template for Sherlock Holmes, writing to him in 1892, quote, "It is most certainly to you that I owe Sherlock Holmes." Isn't that wonderful? That's really, really cool. Bell's eagle face and eerie tricks of spotting details became the detective's hallmark methods, transforming clinical logic into literary legend. Doyle earned his medical degree in 1881 and briefly practiced in Portsmouth and as a ship's doctor, but writing soon eclipsed medicine. Holmes debuted in A Study in Scarlet in 1887, introducing the world's first so-called consulting detective, and his loyal narrator, Dr. John Watson, appeared with him. Of course, Watson had returned from Afghanistan after having been injured, and Watson, being a doctor, was trying to get started. He needed a place to stay, wanted to split the rent, met Sherlock Holmes. Success exploded with the short stories in the Strand magazine from 1891, making Doyle one of Britain's highest paid authors. Yet he chafed at Holmes's dominance, famously killing off the character in The Final Problem, published just 2 years later, 1893. However, he was so popular, Doyle resurrected him a decade later and made the story fascinating amid public outcry. He produced 4 Holmes novels. I thought there were only 2, and dozens of stories, including classics like The Hound of the Baskervilles in 1902. But he prized his historical fiction, like The White Company of 1891 and Sir Nigel of 1906, as his true literary achievements, evoking medieval chivalry with meticulous research. Yes, he was fascinated by that. He was knighted in 1902 for his Boer War medical service and writings defending Britain. Doyle's personal and professional circles included notable friendships that illuminated his character. He shared London's vibrant literary scene with Bram Stoker, author of Dracula. Their bond was warm and mutual. Doyle praised Stoker's vampire novel in an 1897 letter, and Stoker attended Doyle's second wedding on September 18, 1907, to Jean Leckie. His first wife, Louisa Hawkins, had died of tuberculosis the previous year. Stoker even interviewed Doyle that year about his career and impending marriage. Another unlikely friendship was with escape artist Harry Houdini. The two men initially bonded in the early 1920s over a shared interest in the afterlife. Doyle, a fervent spiritualist, Houdini, a determined skeptic. Doyle believed Houdini possessed genuine supernatural powers, despite the magician's protests. However, Houdini's public crusade against fraudulent mediums, including exposing figures like Marjorie Crandon, created a rift. Their correspondence tapered down, highlighting Doyle's post-World War I embrace of spiritualism after losing his son Kingsley and brother Innes. Both Holmes, Doyle's horror tales, and Professor Challenger adventure stories with dinosaurs showcased his versatility. His horror fiction, collected in volumes such as Tales of Terror and Mystery, featured atmospheric dread and scientific speculation. Standouts include The Horror in the Heights and Lot 249, plus The Terror of Blue John Gap, and The Leather Funnel. Doyle's Professor Challenger series offered swashbuckling science fiction and adventure. The bombastic, irascible Professor Challenger first appeared in The Lost World in 1912, leading an expedition to a Southern American plateau teeming with living dinosaurs and prehistoric creatures, an adventure that influenced later works like Jurassic Park. Sequels included The Poison Belt and The Land of Mist. And, of course, they incorporated Doyle's spiritualist beliefs. Shorter tales like When the World Screamed and The Disintegration Machine further explored Professor Challenger's eccentric genius and humanity's hubris. In later years, Doyle's spiritualism consumed a lot of his time. He lectured worldwide, defended the Cottingley Fairies photographs, which were later proven to be fakes, and wrote extensively on the afterlife. Though critics dismissed some of these pursuits, they reflected his lifelong tension between empirical evidence and mystical possibility, the same duality that made Holmes so compelling. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle died of a heart attack on July 7th, 1930. He was 71 years old. His gravestone reads simply, Steel True / Blade Straight / Arthur Conan Doyle, knight, patriot, physician, and man of letters. Doyle's legacy endures because he captured the Victorian faith in reason while acknowledging life's mysteries. Holmes remains a cultural touchstone, yet his creator's broader oeuvre, horror that chills, challenger adventures that thrill, and personal friendships that reveal a complex soul, paints a fuller portrait. In an era of rapid scientific advance and lingering superstition, Doyle embodied both, leaving readers to deduce truth from out of the shadows. Arthur Conan Doyle, 71 years of age. This is close to his birthday, kind of cool. And I'll just mention this. One of the interesting things that I learned about Conan Doyle was that one of the things I learned about fire victims was something based on what Conan Doyle learned about drowning victims. And I mentioned this once on the show before. Conan Doyle discovered, contrary to his original belief, that when he started to do autopsies on bodies that had been washed up on the Scottish shores or anything like that, fishermen that had gone over and they were able to find their bodies, that the drowning victims did not die with their lungs full of water. And Bell actually, I think, explained it to him. Their tracheas seize up and close up. And the same thing happens to a lot of people in very hot fires. What they find is not that the lungs are filled with, terrible, ash and things like that. It's that the superheated air causes an autonomic reflex that makes the trachea go like that, seizes up, and it won't open up again. And they found over and over and over again, as they started to get more into autopsies, that people who had drowned that they expected to find lungs full of water did not have lungs full of water. That many of them drowned. This isn't all of them, but many of them had drowned because their trachea seized up. And I had no idea that the body did that. I thought that was really fascinating. I'm based on sadness, obviously, but wild stuff. The other thing I want to mention is Conan Doyle, I don't think, intended this. But if you look at the death of Holmes, the first supposed death of Holmes, where he falls over the Reichenbach Falls, and he's in that struggle with Moriarty, right? And then there's that period where Watson is alone, and he's thinking about this great figure who showed him so many examples of heroism and morality and ethics. And one of the key things to mention about Sherlock Holmes too is Sherlock Holmes was not he was not merely a mind. He wasn't just intellect. He had an ethical core about right and wrong. So he was intellectual, but at the same time, he drove towards doing right. And so he wasn't just a robot with zeros and ones. He knew the difference between right and wrong. And Watson appreciated that as a doctor. And so, they always fought the bad guys, right? The game is afoot. So one of the interesting things is in the interim period where Holmes is gone, on the return of Sherlock Holmes for a certain period of time, Watson, and you might have seen this if you watched the Sherlock show with Benedict Cumberbatch as Sherlock, Watson is bereft. He doesn't have Holmes with him. And it's very difficult for him to deal. And in a way, Holmes is almost a Christ-like figure, much like Aslan in the C.S. Lewis Narnia books. And then he returns. And I got to say, that's just my take on it recently that I've thought about it. And I thought, in a way, that actually does parallel the idea of a person being without Christ, waiting for Christ to come back, that sort of thing. And here's Holmes in that way, filling that gap, coming back from death. but it wasn't. I don't think it was Conan Doyle's intention. It would be very interesting to be able to see if there were ever anybody who posed that question to him, but I don't think anybody ever did. But I do like that speculation. And of course, this isn't like deconstructionism in fiction is where the teacher tells you this is actually what it means. I know. It's like, really? Do you have any evidence for that? No. Yeah, I hate that. I'm just speculating. I think that would be interesting to consider. That would be kind of fun. The other thing I want to mention is Doyle was very gracious to people who wanted to do Sherlock Holmes stuff. Later, his estate became a little bit tighter, and that's why August Derleth created Solar Ponds, because August Derleth had been a teenager and wanted to write Holmes pastiches, but the estate of Conan Doyle wouldn't allow that. So he created essentially Solar Ponds, who is contemporary to Sherlock Holmes in a different section of London and is a genius and has a sidekick as well. But what's interesting is Conan Doyle was terrific. He licensed Holmes to be in plays that someone was writing for theater in New York, and the theater writer, the playwright, wrote to him because he wasn't sure. He wanted to have a story in which Holmes gets married, and so he wanted to ask Conan Doyle if that would be okay. It was around 1920, I think, and Doyle said. He wrote to him, and Doyle wrote back, and he said, "Sure, 100, absolutely. You know, marry him, kill him, do whatever you want. You know, the character will continue. You know, just as long as it's a Holmes story, and you know, it's okay." And because you know, obviously Doyle had already done that with his character and brought him back, right? So that was pretty cool. It doesn't mess with the mythology so much because Doyle had his established mythos, and that was canon. But the other things were understood as, you know, Holmes stories, and people loved them. Now, what's interesting is the other character who's sort of like Holmes is Doctor Who. Obviously, Tom Baker has played Sherlock Holmes, and he always has his sidekick and so on. And it's interesting to see that the Big Finish people have done the closest, the Big Finish productions, the audio productions. Some of my friends, Mark Morris and Kevin Scott and some of those guys have written some Big Finish stories. And they also try to be very true to the Doctor Who themes. But I'll tell you one thing before I go. I'm not going to go too far into it, but there is one Holmes book that I found to be so, and it's not by Conan Doyle, it's by somebody else. Years later, it was around 2000 or so it was published. It is so offensive to what Conan Doyle created that I brought it with me to read when I went over to England one time to a Doctor Who convention. In fact, I saw Cabin there and a bunch of people. That's where I met Liz Sladen. I threw it away. I didn't even want to donate this book. It's so bad. It's such an insult to what Conan Doyle was trying to do with Holmes and Watson and their pursuit of doing good for people, solving crimes, stopping bad guys. It was just incredibly offensive. And if you look this up, and I will mention the name. The name of the author is Michael Dibdin, and I think he recently passed away. Dibdin. And I think it's called The Last Sherlock Holmes Story or something like that. It's a thin novel. It's just a little longer than a novella. Not only is it atrocious and insulting to the creation and work of Arthur Conan Doyle, utterly disrespectful, but it's obvious within the first page what he's trying to do. Beyond that, I will tell you nothing other than it is one of the most offensive, disgusting, angering things that I think anybody could do to the creation of somebody else. And that says a lot given what the new producers of Doctor Who have done to Doctor Who and what the Star Wars producers did to Star Wars. And, you know, at a certain point, it's entertainment and so on, but when it comes to people like Conan Doyle and it comes to others, you look at what Dacre Stoker is doing to, you know, maintain the reputation and integrity of Bram Stoker's work. There is respect, I think, that it can be provided to people even though they're gone. And it bolsters respect for our contemporaries, other people around us today, and what they might be trying to do in their work, or what they might be trying to do in their families. The simple act of, say, opening a door for somebody, holding it open for someone, or asking somebody, how you doing today? How you doing? Those show an interest in someone else's well-being. And to think that someone can ride on the extremely intense efforts of someone else to maintain his work, to do a good job, and then manipulate it for his own political purposes or something like that, just do it yourself. Do it differently with something else. It is just so disrespectful. And that's one of the reasons why I hate deconstructionism. Because those authors aren't there to defend their work anymore. The teachers in front of the students telling them, shoving it down their throat, this is what it means. And I would defend the authors. We had a teacher telling us, this is what Ray Bradbury means in this story. I was like, really? Do you have that on record? No. So what you're doing is you're using Ray Bradbury's work to drive your political agenda. He's a tool of yours. That's pretty low. Why don't you write your own story? See if you can do it. Take the challenge. Don't take somebody else's work and use it in a way that was not designed to be used. And that's what Michael Dibdin did with that story, the last Sherlock Holmes story. It is literally the most offensive thing I've ever read on fiction. I hope no one reads that book. And if Mr. Dibdin were alive today, I would tell him to his face. I hope his descendants understand the crime that he committed against Arthur Conan Doyle. And by the way, if you look up that book on Goodreads, you'll see it's infamous for what he did. That's all I'll say. As I have my Frankenstein shirt on, I will leave it with the positive. Please remember the great Arthur Conan Doyle, and definitely check out the Professor Challenger books as well. Great stuff. Professor Challenger, The Lost World. Yeah. And of course, the great Sherlock Holmes stories. Fantastic stuff. Awesome. Let's get your thoughts before we go, everybody. We'll say a quick hello to everyone. And yes, Smoohosky says Animal Farm got the 1984 treatment. Why do people do that? Just come up with your own idea. It's like they did that with The Prisoner. They remade The Prisoner and turned it into a collectivist Gestalt theme when it's totally about individualism. It's incredible. And they, of course, they did that with Tolkien, with that Amazon Tolkien series, right? It's ridiculous. Unbelievable. Hey, it's time to go. Let's raid the Tiger's Den, everybody. I don't know how to raid. Someone in the comments, let me know the process. Put it in the comments, in the chat. Tell me how to do it, how to do raid, what I have to write, and then put in the Rumble thing for Tiger. Just let me know how to do that, okay? That'll be awesome. Because I see Smoohosky's Tiger's Live if you want to raid guard. So let me know the process, how to do it, if anybody can do it. That'll be awesome. There you go. So I go like this. I go this. I say raid. And then I put in the URL. Do I put a space in? I think I put a space in. Okay, and I will do that. And let's go to the Tiger's Den. We're going to do a quick zip out. Thanks, man. Great. Angry Tiger's Den. And here we go. We'll go to this. I think I can do it, dude. Thank you. All right. And let's see if it works. I hope I can do it. Do it for Tiger. Do it with your help. And hit it. Let's go for it. Boom. It worked. Hey, you did it. You did it. You did it. You did it in a minute. You guys rock. All right. We're getting ready to close up shop. I'll be seeing you in Tiger's chat in a little while. I'm going to leave you with something fun, something cool. It's going to be the Outer Limits outro. It's going to be a quick one, so you can hop over and check out Tiger. Again, if you want to support what we're doing, contribute over here. That's great. As we head to the end of the month, we have to make up a little bit. That'll be really cool. And, of course, you can become a monthly subscriber at my Substack, and you get great stuff. That is faux show. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night. Watch out for the bad guys, and don't read that Michael Dibdin book. Have a good night.
There is nothing wrong with your television set. Do not attempt to adjust the picture. We are controlling transmission. If we wish to make it louder, we will bring up the volume. If we wish to make it softer, we will tune it to a whisper. We will control the horizontal. We will control the vertical. We can roll the image, make it flutter. We can change the focus to a soft blur, or sharpen it to crystal clarity. For the next hour, sit quietly and we will control all that you see and hear. We repeat, there is nothing wrong with your television set. You are about to participate in a great adventure. You are about to experience the awe and mystery which reaches from the inner mind to the outer limits. We now return control of your television set to you until next week at this same time, when the control voice will take you to the outer limits.